Hi there, guys. So thank you so much for joining. We are Hubble. My name is Tushar Agarwal, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Hubble. Thank you so much for joining our webinar this afternoon. Today, we're going to be discussing how real businesses are solving the hybrid workplace puzzle. And we've got some fantastic guests for you guys today. We'll be running for an hour up until 4 p.m. And the agenda very, very quickly. We're going to have a quick intro about the speakers. We're going to talk a little bit about the free co-working passes that all the attendees above company size of 10 plus will get as a result of coming to the webinar. So thank you so much for registering. We'll get into the panel discussion talking about our topic, and then we'll head into some Q&A. So if you do have questions for the panelists that you want us to talk about right at the end, please do use the Q&A or chat functionality that you've got at the bottom of your Zoom control panel. We will be looking at those questions, we'll be monitoring them, and we'll try and pick up as many as we can at the end of the conversation. So thank you so much for joining. And yeah, let's just a quick intro on our speakers. We'll let them introduce themselves in just a moment. But what we wanted to do today was actually cut through a lot of the media noise around what's going on about the back to office debate. There seems to be really big debate, which is very binary around, is this the death of the office, or is everyone going to go back? And there's a lot of people talking about those trends who are actually not on the front line of that decision making. There's a lot of people whose jobs it is to actually think about that very deeply, and have been thinking about that for the past 12 months and will be in charge of implementing those policies over the next 12 months. And so we're really, really fortunate to have Stephanie, Fiona, Sinead, and Susie from Bumble, Oddbox, Beamery, and Koru kids, who are heading up some of that decision making and some of that thinking around how their companies are going to go back to work. And we'll start talking to them in just a few minutes. But we really wanted to cut through that media noise and talk to the folks who are actually thinking about this day in, day out, not just a columnist in the newspaper. Very, very quickly about Hubble before we crack on. Our mission is to improve the working lives of 1 million people by 2025. And the way we plan to do that is we're launching the world's first hybrid workplace platform, where we want to help every business find the right balance of office and remote working. For those of you who are already familiar with Hubble and what we've been up to for the past 5 years, Hubble HQ has been London's largest online marketplace for renting flexible office space for the past 5 years, with over 5,000 offices live and some really, really big clients as well. And that's really been our bread and butter for the past 5 years or so, really focusing on that flexible office market. What we're about to launch in the next few months is a couple more products which will sort of build out our hybrid workplace offering. The first product will be the Hubble Pass, which will give each team member on-demand access to over 150 hand-picked workspaces across the world. And we're basically onboarding about 30 to 50 new spaces every month at the moment. Another product will be the Hubble Perks product, which will help you export some of the office culture to your remote team to help create productive and happy workspaces at home. And you'll be able to manage all three of those things on one simple platform. So, be able to manage all of your space in one place. Very, very similar to, HR platforms that you'd be used to using. So that's what Hubble was up until now, and what we're looking to launch in the next couple of months. And some of those bits and pieces are coming soon. If we go to the next slide, what we are doing as the Hubble Pass is live now in beta. What we'd love to do is give everyone who's attending the webinar a free month of Hubble Pass, which will mean 4 free day passes for each of your employees, for access to 150 workspaces all across the world. You can sign up now, but you can activate when you're ready. So if you're not quite ready to come back after lockdown, you want to wait until the rules change or lift, that's absolutely fine. Keep your eye out for an email tomorrow with all of the details as well. So hopefully you guys will enjoy that product. And yeah, let's move on to the panel. Hi guys, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. It would be great really, really quickly if you guys can give a quick introduction on yourselves, what your role is within the company, and very quickly, what your company does, just so everyone has a feeling of who's on the panel, and then we can start digging into some of those questions around hybrid work. So Sinead, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, sure. My name is Sinead. I'm Director for Culture and Experience at Beamery. And we essentially are on a mission to put talent transformation at the heart of every business. Apologies for my bell there. Yeah, we're kind of located in London, Austin, and have kind of a distributed workforce kind of remotely beyond that. So yeah, excited to have the discussion today.
Awesome, thank you. Fiona?
Hi, I'm Fiona. I'm the People and Business Operations Manager at Oddbox. We rescue surplus and wonky fruit and veg direct from source and deliver that in a food box scheme to London and the southeast. And yeah, we're spread over 3 sites and navigating the new normal moment.
Great, thank you. Susie?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Susie and Operations Manager at Koru Kids. We are a childcare company and predominantly a part-time nanny service. So we recruit and train people to become part-time nannies and then match them with local families. Although we're also launching a brand new service this week actually, which is our childminding service, which will be more people looking after younger children in their own home, which we're calling our home nursery service. And it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
No worries, great to have you. Stephanie?
Hi, I'm Steph, so I'm Head of Internal Operations and Properties at Bumble. Bumble Inc.'s the parent company for Badoo and Bumble, so 2 of the world's highest grossing dating apps, with millions of users worldwide, and the aim is to create a world where all relationships are healthy and equitable. I manage the London office. We've also got offices in Austin, Barcelona, and Moscow.
That's awesome, man, and congrats on the recent IPO as well. That was fantastic.
Yeah, it's exciting times.
5 years ago, I was an avid Bumble user, but not anymore. So I'm glad it's it's done well.
That's good to hear.
So yeah, thank you so much for the intro, guys. I just thought I'd dig straight in. I mean, we've all had some of these conversations. You know, I've spoken to you guys in the last couple of months around your experience, but it would be great to hear what working at your companies was like and your relationship with the office pre-COVID. What have you guys done in the last 12 months in COVID? And what are you guys thinking about more broadly post-COVID? And feel free for that answer to be, short and snappy and more general, because we can sort of dig into some of those themes a bit later on as well. But just to get some context. And I think the other interesting thing is that we've got a really wide range of companies here who are all doing slightly different things. So it'd be great to get an indication on that. I'll just kick off with you, Sinead. I'm just going like clockwise on my Zoom screen at the moment.
Of course. So I actually joined Beamery mid-pandemic. So I moved and had to meet people virtual first. So like a really interesting kind of experience. But from Beamery's perspective, a lot of the focus on around COVID times, but also for the future that we're going to be looking at is kind of around how we work and how we make those moments of connection and moments to spark, especially with situated across like various different time zones, etc. So figuring out how we move into asynchronous ways of working and get people really communicating across different channels properly has been a really core piece, and making sure that we've got kind of things like Beamery cafes and moments for connection throughout that time. So yeah, I haven't seen the to know what the post is really going to look like in comparison, but I know that we're very dedicated to thinking about how we work as being much more critical to than where in particular we're kind of working.
And do you guys anticipate sort of your office situation to be different moving forward than it was sort of pre-COVID?
I think we are still ironing out what the office space and situation is going to look like, but we definitely have our current offices and hubs that we'll be returning to in the first instance. What life looks like beyond that, kind of who knows. Hopefully we'll have some exciting plans. There'll be a bit of repurposing the space. There might be a bit of looking for kind of new homes, but one thing's for sure is that the way that we use the space is going to be really different. We're going to be going very much from a collaboration first model and running on kind of having collaboration days, and we want to essentially ensure that when people come to Beamery spaces, it's because it's like special. We've had record growth. We've had, you know, the best growth of our lives in the last 12 months. We've had record quarters and really exceeded our expectations. And I think now it's all about making sure those moments where we come together don't break the success. So we want to make sure the spaces that we are creating and are encouraging people to come back to and collaborate on are all about collaboration, being creative, and having opportunities and resources and spaces that enable people to produce and ship their kind of best work. So for us, it's going to be, how do we make those moments enticing? Obviously, you can't have collaboration days by just turning up by yourself. So there's got to be a real level of coordination and being in sync, whether that's on team or company level. So there's a lot of decisions around how we use the space, what we need to use the space for, why people use the spaces, and kind of understanding what collaboration means to different people depending on their different kind of roles and inputs and work. So yeah, lots to consider.
Yeah, lots and lots to consider. I guess, does that for you guys look like sort of, you know, and I know that you weren't at Beamery sort of pre-COVID. Does that mean sort of like moving from an office first, office centric culture into perhaps even more of a hybrid remote first culture? Is that how you guys would describe it?
I think we would describe it as being really interested in the how we work over the where we work. And I think when we actually did the kind of partnered with Hubble to do our kind of survey of the team, expecting to see kind of a hard swing one way or the other. But actually what we found was that I think it was like 77% of our team really eager to get back into workspaces, collaborate, maintain our culture, be social. But then 97% of the team said they really value flexibility and the ability to kind of work remotely. So for us, it's really clear that there is no remote first or office first kind of approach. We want the best of both worlds because we appreciate the best of those. And so for us, it's figuring out the balance to make sure that those moments that spark magic when we kind of come together are really all singing and all dancing and really make the impact, rather than getting stuck in. Because I'm sure as we kind of come back, our expectations of, you know, what all these hybrids look like are going to change, and we might find that we end up taking a different approach. So we're being very balanced in thinking about what our people need, but being very intentional about why we're coming together, but then also still building for the rituals, the principles, the communication, the culture, codifying our culture as we go along, regardless of what we kind of do.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I think your survey results are also quite interesting, because when we did a survey of about 1,000 employees across hundreds of businesses across the UK, the one stat that really stood out was that 70% of people still wanted an office of some sort, but actually also exactly 70% of people wanted the flexibility to work remotely. And what's been really interesting to see is that was obviously a big survey conducted across hundreds of businesses with thousands of people. But what we're also hearing more and more from our clients and our customers is actually those results are being replicated to some degree within companies as well, unless the culture is very extreme one way. So unless people are very, very remote first, or they're very, very office centric, in general, we're kind of seeing that replicated across. So it's fascinating you guys have seen that too. So love to move on to Fiona. Fiona, you're another person who joined during the pandemic and are now trying to figure out how to take Oddbox post-COVID. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, you know, what the Oddbox culture was like in terms of the workplace and the office, if you have any of that context, what you guys have been doing the last 12 months, and, you know, how you're thinking about post-COVID as well.
So I joined at the start of April, which was about 2 weeks after everyone had gone fully remote for the first time. We had just moved into our bigger office in Vauxhall as well at the start of March. So the team was really excited about having this new, bigger space to work from. And then they all went home. And we've been majority remote for the last 12 months. We do have operations team members who've been on site as required. So I guess we were fairly flexible from what I understand before, you know, most of the team working 2 or 3 days a week from home anyway before COVID. And I think the big focus for me at the moment is defining when we say we're a flexible company and we talk about flexibility at Oddbox, what does that actually mean for us? And what does it mean for individual teams as well? Because every team has a different requirement for when staff need to be on site or if they need to travel or things like that. So that's going to be a big focus for us in the next few weeks and months. We are reopening our main site from next Monday. So we've done lots of surveys as well. And I think our results were 96% of the team think we should have an office, but what they want to use it for has changed significantly in the last 12 months. So again, it's mainly about collaboration. It's about the culture. It's about socials. So everyone's got really comfortable and really enjoys the option to work from home when they need to do deep work, or if they've got lots of meetings all day and not having to commute, and kind of adding that time and expense as well to their weeks. So I think, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see as well when we do reopen, from the team telling us they would like the option, how they actually come back to the space and how they use it, and what they've told us versus what actually happens. So we're not making any definite plans. It's just going to be assessing the situation as restrictions lift and as the team kind of comes back together.
Great. So I guess in a similar vein to some of the stuff that Sinead was talking about with Beamery, it feels like you guys are being quite intentional and quite deliberate about what physical environment should each employee be in order to sort of optimize for the best of both worlds. Is that sort of the thinking?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is about what does the business need and what do team managers need, but it's also very much focused on the individual. So how does each individual work best? How do they perform best? You know, that's what at the end of the day, we want everyone to be able to succeed in their roles. So that's a big focus for us. So it's understanding the individual needs, the company needs, and how we can find compromise and make the space work for us. So if it's that instead of having 40 desks, we need to have more collaboration areas and more meeting rooms, then that's something that we'd look to kind of implement.
Yeah, really interesting. And I guess that's you guys are thinking down to the individual level, which is fascinating, because actually I think that's one of the things that COVID has really put a magnifying glass on, is that the office previously was a one size fits all, and it didn't really take into account individual demographics, personal circumstances, family, friends, location, introverts versus extroverts versus ambiverts. And I think all of those different facets of people's personalities and circumstances have really come to the forefront. And it's really interesting to hear you guys as an employer thinking down to the individual level of what is important for the individual, and then how do we take that and then collectively figure out how we work better as an organization. That's absolutely fascinating. And these conversations were definitely happening pre-COVID, but they just weren't as widespread as they are now. So I find it, having been in the office sector now for 6 years now, the level of depth and first principles thinking around this stuff is absolutely fascinating. So I'm really glad to hear that that's how you guys are thinking about it. Great. It'd be lovely to hear from you, Susie. Koru Kids, sort of pre-COVID, in COVID, post-COVID, what's your experience been? What are you guys thinking?
Yeah, sure. So I've been with Koru Kids for 4 years now. Our first 3 years, I think we had about 6 offices in total. We moved around quite a lot. As you do, if you're kind of part of a growing startup, we went from 4 people to about 75 in that space of time. So we needed to keep moving because we kept outgrowing our spaces. And similar to Fiona, at the beginning of last year, we moved into a bigger office, what was meant to be our kind of forever office. It had space for us to grow into. We thought we'd be there for a while, or longer than we had been at our previous offices anyway. And then sadly, obviously, COVID hit. And everyone started working from home, and sadly our team size shrunk as well. So we suddenly didn't need a 120 person office anymore. It didn't make sense for us to keep hold of it. So since kind of, I think it would have been April last year, we haven't actually had an office at all, and everyone has been working from home. Pre-COVID, we were already kind of working towards being a remote first team. One of our big missions at Koru Kids is to help women get back into the workforce after they've had children by providing them with childcare. So it's really important for us, for our employees, to be able to work flexibly if they need to, if childcare doesn't work out, or for any other reasons, basically. And we already had people starting to move out of London pre-COVID, and we wanted to make sure that people could feel like they could do that if they needed to, and that there was no reason why they would need to be in the office. Since COVID, we've seen quite a few more people decide to leave London as well. So it's kind of even more important to us that we are remote first, and that if that's what people want to do, they should be able to do that and still stay at Koru Kids. You know, we want to retain as many people as we can. So hence we are now completely remote first, and we will be kind of forever, no matter what COVID is up to. So as I said, we haven't had an office since then, but we've definitely, you know, we've had people who have wanted to get back into an office and see their colleagues again and start kind of collaborating. And actually using your guys' Hubble Pass to Shah has been amazing over the last few months. I think I might be one of your top users. I use it so much. So that's been how we've kind of solved people's need to collaborate and see colleagues over the last few months without actually having an office space where people can go to. And it's only now that we're starting to think, okay, what should we do next? We know that people do want an office. We've done surveys like most of the other guys here have done, and it's clear that people want somewhere to go to if they need. But it's also clear that most people will only be going to an office kind of 1 or 2 days a week. So it's just trying to figure out how big an office do we need and how do we manage. It's obviously going to be hot desking. You know, people won't be able to have their own fixed desk. So how do we manage that? And also, how do we allow for collaboration to occur as well, with the use of meeting rooms and things like that. But those decisions are all kind of happening over the next few months, pending COVID behaving itself, as I said.
Thanks so much, Susie. That's fascinating. What I found really interesting about your story, and especially when we talked about before as well, is how you guys are aligning the mission of your company with actually what the policy of your workplace is. So actually, how can the policy of your workplace actually help you achieve your mission? And are you setting the right example for the change that you want to make in the world? So I think that's absolutely fascinating. And again, you know, we're seeing this for the first time really ever, that people are making these sorts of very big company decisions and aligning them around the purpose of their company. And again, you know, childcare, schools being closed, parents having to take care of the kids whilst they're at home and also trying to have full-time jobs. That's been such a big part of the story during the pandemic. And you know, I think that conversation is going to look very different now because there's been a massive spotlight on it for the last 12 months or so. So it's really great that you guys are moving forward in a way that sort of helps you guys achieve your mission. That's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Susie. Stephanie, love to hear the Bumble story too.
Yeah, so before pre-COVID, it was very much a kind of home from home office that we wanted to create. So very sociable, lots of amazing perks on site, you know, the usual like the food, yoga, haircuts, which is probably the thing I've missed the most. You know, all this amazing atmosphere at the work, and it was kind of definitely a home from home. During COVID, everyone's been working from home. None of the offices have reopened. And we found that there's, like we were saying, there's a definite shift. So when everything first started, I think people quite enjoyed working from home. Maybe that was the novelty of it, but they actually thought, you know, this is quite nice. We can actually get things done remotely. As time has progressed, people are definitely wanting to come back. Echoing really what the other guys on the panel are saying, the need for that and the reason for coming back is definitely more along the collaborative route. Our mission kind of is still up in the air in terms of what we want to create the office space to be. We definitely want it to be flexible. We want it to be somewhere that's useful for staff to be, not necessarily a tick box of come to the office because you have to. That kind of sentiment is definitely going. It's more kind of echoing what Sinead said in terms of it's how we work, not where we work. And I think that's what we're still trying to figure out, because I think it's moving so much, and it has done in the last year. I still think it's very fluid. I think that as people are getting vaccinated and necessarily want to come back to the office, will people want to come back more in a year's time? And will there be as much of a hybrid need? Will it be more working from the office and less flexible? I think it's really difficult to say right now. So for us, we've had an amazing year, as you mentioned, with the IPO, which is great. We've had a big recruiting surge, which is fantastic. So we're definitely looking at the London space, but we're just still not sure what that looks like yet. We think it's a bit too early to say. So yeah, who knows, basically.
Yeah, that's that seems to be the theme at the moment of this is what we think right now.
Yeah.
What we think right now is different to what we thought 6 months ago, and it may be different again in another 6 months. So we kind of just need to wait and see. So that's fascinating. And I think when you're describing the Bumble office as a home away from home, it's fascinating, right? Because over the past 10 years, I think Google essentially pioneered this, is that they started creating offices that were nicer than people's homes. So people wanted to go into the office so they could have like the barbershop and the haircut, and they could have the free coffee and the nap pods and the catered lunch, etc. And then, we worked sort of Google sort of pioneered it, and then WeWork kind of bottled it up and sold it to everyone. And it became the sort of office that you wanted to have as a company. And people would spend more and more time in the office than their apartments. And COVID has basically reversed that. So that was bringing home and life into the workplace, and now the workplace has gone into people's homes, and we've seen the pendulum shift completely the opposite way. And it'll be interesting to see how much of that there's a desire to come in, because actually the office is actually a nicer environment, especially if you live somewhere like central London and we're all living in sort of boxed up apartments, living centrally, that actually the office can be a much nicer environment to work in. So yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. Thanks so much. I think what I wanted to dig into a little bit now was a lot of you have been talking about sort of surveying your employees, thinking about sort of what do people want. I'd love to sort of dig in a little bit more about your decision-making process and how you guys have been capturing that sentiment. And another interesting thing to hear about would be whether you've seen sort of, employee preferences be very different from management team or leadership team, and whether, there's a resolution or in general, our management teams just looking at what employees want and are looking just to cater to that. And that if you have any sort of insights as well, has that sort of changed over the last 12 months? Because I know from our own surveys that sentiments have changed almost every 3 months, really. So yeah, it'll be great to dig in a little bit more about how you guys are sort of surveying your employees and figuring out that stuff. Yeah, I may as well go clockwise again. So Sinead, do you want to give us a bit of insight into that?
Yeah, of course. So we've had a couple of moments for kind of surveys and things like that, and also kind of anecdotal kind of catch ups with people to get a temperature check of what's really sitting beneath the data. Because I think even maybe the Hubble survey, it was like, what do you value, like a rooftop? And I'm like, oh yeah, never even thought that I would value that. Like, absolutely, little tick. So maybe there's some stuff that doesn't match up into the reality of what would actually compel you to kind of go back into spaces. And I think we've still got a lot of work and decisions to make around what is it that people really are going to be compelled to go into these spaces for. Is it collaborative space? Is it a space that's nicer than your home? I think for me, it probably would have to be somewhere that makes a really good coffee and feels like a really great vibe. And I think that preference is going to change for kind of everyone. But I think another part of, and actually I think Fiona and Susie and Stephanie have also kind of alluded to this as well, is trying to make sure that we're making decisions based on what our people think, what our leadership and management kind of need as they're seeing the ways of working change, and also as we're seeing teams grow, because our team is going to grow by another, we're going to probably double our headcount in the next 12 months. So our team and our culture are going to evolve and grow. So we can't just always take the temperature check of what our people say now as kind of law. We need to be flexible to the future. So we're also looking at, what are our core values? How does that all align? One of our virtues is all around seeing growth as a shared responsibility, and then making the the best in others. And so we're looking at how does every decision we make align to that, as well as kind of sentiment in the moment, because I think we know from some of the flexible passes we've had that what people said they wanted and then the amount of use that things actually had, there was a real discrepancy between those. So we're trying to be sensible about not overestimating and going too hard on what people are going to want. And I think Stephanie mentioned this in a previous kind of catch up, but spaces that we create, and we might create the perfect specification kind of space, but actually the way people use and interact with things once they're on the ground will mean that we might have to change and move things. So we're going to be trying to, moving forwards, have more, as Fiona kind of said, like individual team kind of conversations, so that we can understand individual and team preferences in that greater context of the company needs too.
Yeah, it's a classic. It's also something that we think about as entrepreneurs and even people building startups. Is that when you're doing customer feedback, when you're trying to build a new product, what people say they want and how they actually behave can sometimes be very different. And I think very, very similar themes around employees, but also what we're seeing at Hubble is how survey results are changing. Is a lot of it's dependent upon sentiment. So when people feel particularly locked down and the lockdown is quite severe, the survey results are all around getting out as much as possible. Or even when people haven't been on holiday for 6 months, everyone wants to go work abroad because you want the opposite of the thing that you're sort of subjected to. And so actually just general sentiment of how people are feeling, and people can sometimes overestimate what they're gonna want in 3 months' time versus how they feel right now. So it is really, really challenging to sort of sift through some of that noise sometimes as well. Fiona, how have you guys done this, and how have you guys found that process?
So we've done quite a lot of surveys, and our surveys have looked not just at kind of what people want from a workplace, but also their well-being. So how are they doing while they're working remotely, and how productive they're feeling? Because I think that those things can tell a lot about how the team is managing. Our results have changed a lot because we've grown a lot in the last 12 months as well. So we've welcomed 50 new joiners, the majority of whom have been remote for the entire time with Oddbox. So I think that's maybe had a few challenges as well. So when we ask the team now what they want from the office, most of them have never been there. When I've been asking questions, they've been very pointed about, these are facilities that we have now. So rather than a wish list, this is what we have. How do you think you're going to use it? And what of the things that we have do you want to use? So it's been very focused on our facilities that we have. So that's been illuminating. And then again, we are still quite a small team, so 70 of us. So I haven't seen any real misalignment between what the senior leaders are thinking and how they are wanting to work, versus what some of our new joiners have had, which makes my life much easier, because I don't have to have those conversations and kind of come to a compromise. So everyone feels that there's a time for being in the office and there's a time to work remotely, and it's how do we accommodate that so that it, like I said earlier, so that it works for the business, so that it works for the individuals, so that it works for every team.
And how have you guys been gathering those insights? Have you used any tools, or are you doing is it team leaders who are doing one-on-ones? Like how have those conversations happened? Have they been a bit more organic than that?
So most of it is company-wide surveys. So Google Forms, my best friend. So yeah, just gathering all of the data and taking it away, crunching the numbers, and also what's really important is presenting it back to the team. This is what we heard, and walking them through that, and having those discussions as well, because we can cut the data by team, saying to the team managers, this is what your team wants, so that they're not kind of assuming because people assume in gaps, right? So it's giving them the data from what their teams have said, so that they can go, okay, yes, let's do once a week. The whole team's going to come into the office, and that works for us. And starting to, think about that, and then trialing it. Does it work? Do people actually want to come in on a set day and collaborate in that way, or do we need to be a bit more organic? And then over the next few months, looking at things like occupancy rates, and then asking the team again, you've been in the office for a few months now, how are you feeling? What do you want? So I think there's going to be a lot of experimentation and trying new things and putting our hands up when things don't work, saying, sorry, that didn't work, we won't do that again.
That's really interesting. I think this period of experimentation is fascinating, right? Because actually, like, no one really knows the answer. Yeah. And on one hand, you can view the experimentation as something which is anxiety inducing or creates uncertainty. Or the other way you can view it as something that's quite exciting. Like, you know, you run a bunch of experiments. Some of them will inevitably fail, but some of them may give some really amazing insights, and the company can actually run a lot better and everyone can be a lot happier. And some of them may just be completely unexpected. So, and we almost all have license to do that now, because we've all been given permission by what's happened over the past 12 months to be able to run those experiments where they may have been harder pre-COVID.
Yeah, I mean, it's setting the kind of the new norms for the company as well, which we can do over Zoom, but sometimes it helps to have that in person as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Thank you so much, Fiona. Susie, how have you guys been surveying your staff, sort of, you know, understanding insights, and, you know, is there also alignment between leadership teams and employees as well?
Yeah, so we've also been surveying people. We've only done a couple of surveys actually. I think the first one was we used your guys' survey at Hubble, and off the back of that, we were actually really close to pulling the trigger on an office in September last year. Thankfully we didn't, because I don't think we would have really been able to use it. But similar to Fiona, it's just Google Forms that we've been using, collecting data on how many days people want to come into the office, and actually kind of separating out whether they want to come in to do individual work or whether they want to come in to do collaborative work, and then from then kind of figuring out, okay, what kind of space do we need? The other thing that we've been asking is, as I mentioned, some people have been moving outside of London or kind of to the outskirts of London at least, so that their commute would be quite considerably longer if they were to come into central London. And therefore, we're trying to figure out whether it's important for people to be able to hot desk at other locations, not necessarily our main office. And figure out whether we should also be offering something more flexible, like a Hubble Pass, on top of the main office that we have in central London. In terms of whether there's a mismatch between what leadership want and what the employees want, like, absolutely not. Like, the same as Sinead and Fiona, everyone's kind of on the same page that it should just be, you know, whatever works best for the individual. And as I said, we made the decision to go remote first, so all of our decisions will have that as kind of the forefront, and that's how we'll decide like how we work as a team. But everyone is in terms of, like, between leadership and everyone else, everyone is very much on the same page with our kind of office decisions.
That's awesome. I think next time we do a panel, we definitely want to bring some people in who are there's a tussle between leadership and what people are thinking, because you know, I think that is when you pick up the newspaper, you would assume that that's happening in every organization, that, you know, leadership teams are old school and want everyone back in the office, and then the employees are revolting and want work from home, if you were to pick up any newspaper. And actually, in reality, what we've seen is exactly, you know, mostly aligned with what you guys are saying. Is actually most employers are very comfortable in trusting their employees' preferences and being able to cater around that, as long as, like, there's a balance, and there isn't that much sort of like tension between what's going on. But maybe we need to go speak to some more old school businesses rather than progressive business cultures like you guys at some point in time. And Stephanie, how have you guys been doing this? Obviously, you guys are a much larger team. You're spread across different geographies. How has that been working in terms of picking up, you know, employee insights and figuring out, does that align with the leadership teams too?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking, our leadership team are very forward thinking. So they've made it really clear that the way that we're going to be moving forward, the key around it all is flexible and trying to make it work for you, because everyone's kind of situation is so different. You know, in London, lots of people are renting flats or in very small 1-bed flats. You know, when we've got offices in Austin, the situation there is very different. So we've been doing a lot of surveys, but also having my team and I have been having chats with like the heads of the department as well. It's kind of to get a feel for like what a wish list would be, not necessarily promising anything, but just saying like, if you could have your ideal scenario, what would that look like? And then getting the feedback from staff as well to say like, to get their kind of pulse on it as well. But I think the main thing throughout all of this is just to try and have that bit of flexibility and fluidity, because I just think, like you said, people are going to say one thing, and then as hopefully life comes back to some form of normal, whatever that looks like post-COVID, London starts to become a bit more of a hub again, because at the minute, no one's doing anything, no one's going into central London, so it does feel more of a chore. If we think about when life kind of goes back to post-COVID, you know, and things are back open, maybe people will have a bit more of an appetite to go into central London because they've got more of a social life and it ties into that. If you think of the demographic of your company and you've got young people working there, that could be something to consider. But then equally, you know, people could be going into the office and then be like, actually, I quite miss working from home. So it's coming back to that balance. But I do think it's just, we're trying to just be very cautious in our approach and just kind of keep a pulse on what people are feeling now and not be too strict about it moving forward. So I think our kind of ethos is very kind of fluid and flexible at the moment, and just trying to figure it out before we kind of make any big decisions, because I think there's just been so much change, and I think there's still a lot more to come before we're kind of stable in what we're going to be rolling out.
Yeah, it's I think what we found is that the larger companies have a mammoth task on their hands. So if you're smaller than sort of 50, you can just about get by with having, you know, you can have surveys, you can have conversations, and you can kind of figure out what's going on. But I think as soon as it hits 50 plus, you need to have formal surveys, you need to do it by geography, by department, and then you need to kind of figure out what should your widespread policy be, if at all, and then catering down to the individual employee or team level is you know, is a bit of a challenge. So
relevant to like local markets as well, because we've already seen differences in Moscow because the restrictions have lightened there. So we've been having like a few people back in the office, socially distanced. Barcelona's a new office for us, so we've got a small space for them at the moment, just so the team can meet each other because they've not met at all. It's a completely new location. So yeah, it's just trying to keep a pulse on what's relevant for everybody. I don't think it's ever going to be a one size fits all at all, really.
Yeah, of course. And I think that's also the nature of where the world of work is going, right? So it was one size fits all before, and, you know, no one really catered for those individual personalities and circumstances. And if we can create a world where people can actually work in the right place for them, for the sort of work that they're doing, and I think that would be brilliant and make people a lot happier and also a lot more productive too. So final question from me before we move on to some of the Q&A we've got going on, which is, there's a lot of questions actually. Final question for me is around, most of you have talked about hiring and building out your teams during this period. How has the conversation around location and office factored into that? Do you think that's been a way that you've won or lost talent? Like what are sort of the questions that people are asking when you're trying to recruit them and they're joining? And I guess tied to that is, you know, is being hybrid or remote first sort of like a way to attract talent? Or is it actually that people have very different preferences? For example, I've heard companies have gone remote first, that they've lost employees who want to be in the office, and, you know, vice versa has happened. So yeah, it'd be great to hear some experiences on that. And I'm a bit conscious of time, so it'd be great to get like the headlines, and we can move on to some of the Q&A from the audience too. Sinead, I'll go to you first, and we'll keep our clockwise order.
You want to go in? Yeah, I mean, look, I think the new kind of way of working and having flexibility at its core is like a huge opportunity for, you know, building diverse and more inclusive workforces and workspaces, but it also poses a massive danger of creating pockets of kind of little cliques or clusters where people then become isolated from these hybrid spaces where people opt not to go to these physical gatherings and spaces. So I think at the moment, from a hiring and recruitment perspective, it's all about knowing that your employer or potential employer is thinking about these things and thinking about flexibility. But I think that it's a great opportunity for diversity, inclusion, equity, all of that kind of stuff. But also it poses a really big challenge to get it right, so no one's kind of left left out to kind of leave later down the line. But yeah, I think it's a big part of the conversation, but flexibility at the heart of the conversation is so important.
Cool. Yeah, sorry, go for it, Fiona.
Yeah, we've just been reiterating, when those questions have come up, even before COVID, we were flexible. So it's about the work you do rather than where you do the work. So that's come through, and yeah, I mean, I think everyone who we've onboarded was aware from the start that we do a mix of in office and at home working, anyway, even if COVID hadn't happened. So no, not too many difficult conversations, thankfully.
And have you seen people? Do you think that you have a more open attitude to where people are located now than pre-COVID, in terms of they can be outside of a commuting distance, for example? Like, are you happy to hire people who are further away from London?
We've had quite a few of the team move outside of London, so I think that's something that we would never discount someone, if they lived 2 hours away or 3 hours away. It would be about, when you are needed in the office, can you get there? And if you can, then that's great. So it's certainly something to consider as well in the future as we continue to grow.
Cool. Yeah, interesting. I think we're the same. Previously, we wouldn't have considered hiring people outside of London, and now we're looking at applications from across the UK. And actually, we've had some really great applicants from both sides of the world. So applicants from India and from North America, and we're more open to those applicants now than we ever were before. We would have just had a hard no at that point in time. So it's interesting where this is going. Susie, what have you guys seen on that front?
Yeah, so pre-COVID, we were just starting to let our employees leave London if they wanted to. And then kind of since COVID hit, as I said, we've become remote friendly, and that has been amazing in terms of recruitment for us. And we've been able to recruit really great talent from outside of London, which has been amazing. But as you say, we also need to be conscious of people who are in London who do want an office, and we need to make sure that we are catering to those people's needs as well. So making sure that we are able to offer a really great office space for people for whom it's important is going to be key for us in terms of recruitment too, moving forward.
Cool. And Stephanie?
I'm not wholly involved in the recruitment process, but just kind of words from a few of the recruiters saying a lot of people, it is the flexibility given the diversity of people that we employ. So, single parents with kids that have not been at school are really keen for the flexible working. The younger kind of demographic are really keen to have a central office still, so they can come in and socialise. And so yeah, again, it's the flexibility I think that's key, but we're still promoting that. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much, guys. So I think I'm going to move on to Q&A. There's 17 questions in the Q&A, and the chat's been going wild as well. So let's see how much we can fit in 9 minutes. Might have to do some quick fire questions to see if we can get through a few more. I guess before we move on to Q&A, to everyone who's listening in, we're going to be running these panels every month. There's a lot of really interesting people who are doing very interesting things about thinking about their workplace. If you'd like to come on and share the story of your company and some of the challenges and some of the interesting things that you're doing, similar to the panelists that we have here, you're more than welcome to email hannah@hubblehq.com. And we'll be looking to do a panel every month so everyone can kind of learn from each other. And we also have a community called the Wizards of Ops, which is the Woo community. And hopefully we launched that community about 3 to 6 months before COVID hit. So when things start getting back to normal, we'd love to get everyone back part of that community and have more of these conversations on a regular basis. So if you'd love to get it, if you'd love to get involved, please get in touch with hannah@hubblehq.com. And we'd love to see some of you at the next panel too. So moving on to the questions, I'm going to pick out a few which I think are interesting or can cover a few of the themes that we're seeing. I've got an interesting question from Nikesh. So he had a question around meetings and communication when working hybrid. So that's a topic that I hear a lot of. Are you going to allow sort of hybrid meetings to happen where some people are in the office and some people outside the office? Or are you guys looking to have a more stringent policy that all meetings either need to be remote or they need to be in person? Have you guys started thinking about that? And love for you guys to keep your answers brief if we can, and then we can try and get through a few more questions.
I'll jump in on that. We are encouraging like a fully hybrid model. So if someone's in the office and someone's not, we're looking to implement the IT to make sure that people feel like they're still part of the meeting. And that's given the globalization of the company, it's kind of a necessity because lots of times people are in different locations. So yeah, we're fully supporting the hybrid.
Yeah, it's the same for us as well. We've got 3 sites, multiple shift patterns. It's making sure that there's, again, a framework and some guidelines around what's expected, because even without COVID, we would be in this situation. So it's making sure everyone has the IT and the tech to have those really valuable meetings.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. I won't waste time repeating the answers, but we will be fully hybrid for our meetings, and IT and tech will be key in making sure that we can do that.
Cool. It feels like you guys are going to have to nail hybrid meetings. So good luck with that. It is possible, but we're actually seeing lots more co-working spaces and offices actually create Zoom rooms with a proper Zoom screen setup, Zoom hardware setup. So I think it's going to be interesting because I think there's going to be lots of purpose-built spaces for the hybrid meeting too. Cool. I see a really interesting question from Caleb Parker, who's talking about basically, I think the question is around giving choice to employees of how and where they spend budget. So, if you guys were spending X £100 a month per employee on their office space before, but you want to give them optionality around investing in their home working infrastructure or using a local co-working space. How do you guys think about sort of like your internal budgets? Does that come out of the office budget, or is that like an additional budget from, say, perks or employee well-being or welfare? How do you guys think about that?
So we've done, if we're going to be flexible friendly, we know we need to enable that. So everyone receives a work from home allowance on top of the kind of standard provision of equipment that we give them, and that's to enable them to work effectively from home. So that's the approach we've taken, and that's office budget. Yeah.
Okay, so you're basically redeploying office budget that you had before into. Okay, interesting. Cool.
I think it's a really interesting question. Throughout COVID, we've done similar, where we've kind of provided a working from home allowance and made a contribution per month to support everyone who's kind of working from home. What that looks like once we get back into offices, we're going to have a blend of office space and access to flexible passes in the first instance. So then what the world of perks looks like as we kind of grow the team, not entirely sure, but one thing we definitely know for sure is that as we've said, there is no one size fits all, and we'll be looking at that across all of our benefits offerings, our perks, and we don't know what configuration that's going to take, but being able to have discretionary choice and being able to build things around your personal preferences is something we're definitely considering.
Cool. Yeah, all those budgets start to blend into one, and you need to figure out how to allocate them. Stephanie or Susie, you guys have anything on this, or you want me to move on to the next question?
No, it's similar. We implemented a few work from home stipends for people throughout the year, twice throughout the year, to help people set up or buy anything they needed to kind of help working from home. And we distributed equipment as well, so everyone's got the kind of kit that they need. Budget wise, yeah, it's just kind of, it's a good question, which I'm sure my finance team hate me for, but yeah, it does kind of, it's been reallocated basically. We're not, we want to make sure that everyone's comfortable because this isn't anyone's kind of choice. It's kind of thrown upon us. So yeah, it's key that everyone's comfortable and can work from home effectively.
Cool, awesome. So it's great that you guys are investing in that. We've seen, and again, the papers have been covering a lot of these companies who have decided to ditch their office, but they're actually not redeploying any budget to invest in working from home or working remotely for those same people. So it's purely bottom line decision. And I think some of those employers are going to find it difficult to retain really great employees versus companies like you guys who are investing in that. Cool, thank you so much. I think we've probably got time for a few more rapid questions. This is always a really, really popular question, which is tooling. So what tools are you guys using to help you sort of do remote work or do hybrid work better? You know, what have you found really, really useful over the past 12 months, and what do you see is going to be useful going forward too? I'll let you guys sort of jump in at random if you want on this one.
So we're looking to use a tool called Robin that was absolutely implemented in our Austin office for meeting room bookings, but they've kind of diversified since COVID to like hot desk booking or just kind of capacity issues, because so we know how many people we've got in the office at one time. We haven't rolled it out in London yet. It's still something that we're considering, but we are using it in Moscow and Austin at the moment for meeting rooms and hot desking.
Yeah, I think tooling's going to be a big one. Aside from, I think something we're going to look at to build extra infrastructure around and figure out what tools are right, but couldn't right now tell you there's one kind of tackling everything tool that's really, really worked.
Yeah. Susie, Fiona, same for you guys? Yeah. Cool. So final question, and this probably requires a thumbs up or a thumbs down just to keep it really, really simple. It's about culture. So I think we've spoken a lot about company culture over the course of the last 45 minutes. Do you guys feel that, you know, nearly all of you are considering some form of hybrid, whether that's an office-centric hybrid or a remote-first hybrid? Do you guys believe going forward that will be a thumbs up for your company culture or a thumbs down for your company culture? Brilliant. Awesome. Great. Well, that's a great note to end upon. Thank you so much for joining me. One of the things that we're trying to do at Hubble all of the time is trying to almost battle against all of the media noise around the office and get down to A, the facts, B, the stats, and also try to talk to the people who are like you guys, who are like making those decisions, and, you know, try and understand the process and the challenges and the anxieties and, you know, a lot of the pressures that come with that. So I really, really appreciate you guys joining me and sharing your stories. I think, you know, everyone who's on the panel, everyone who's in the audience really wants to hear that. People want to hear those real life stories. So I'm sure that you've given lots of people lots of inspiration and lots of practical advice as well. So thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Really, really appreciate it. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys soon, and good luck with the new office setup. So I look forward to hearing how it all pans out in the next couple of months as well.